Who were the bowlers? What happened to the intros? What are football, tennis, badminton experts doing on a cricket pod? Are we a cricket pod even? Even if our new logo makes you believe so. Why is Bazball? Where were you when we were flying high? Slowly walking down the ball, faster than a cannonball. Where were you when we were flying high? Someday they will find me caught beneath the headlines from a Bazball super over in Chennai. So onwards then to episode 82 of more of this nonsense, the Bits and Pieces podcast, where we've got a strangely eclectic, accomplished panel featuring a couple of debutants, much like the Indian ODI side in the absence of Virat and Rohit. Whisper it, but it may even have made us stronger. Srinath Sripath here, manning pod hosting duties for this week, and joining me, starting with the Scroll's former sports editor, the man who consumes sport 26 hours a day, 8 hours a week, who hasn't known 8-hour sleep cycles for at least a decade straight. The Satvik Smash world record holder for the fastest tweets from across badminton, Arsenal, women's cricket, chess, multi-sport events, and most importantly, the king of Goundamani GIFs. For the first time on the pod, Trichy's own, the world famous Vinayakk M. Vanakkam, Vinayakk. TV volume konjam kammi pannunga.
Trichy's own. Nice to see you, Trichy's own, Srinath. Thanks for having me here. Great to be a part of one finally. Thanks to Choppy for the invite, and thanks to you all for letting me be a part of this. Looking forward to this. Thank you.
Maze, I think that's the most respectful, formal response we've had on the pod in 82 episodes. Welcome, Vinayakk. Absolute pleasure. Time for our second debutant, who'll actually tell you that he's technically on the second episode of Bits and Pieces, at least according to himself. Say hello to the Bengaluru FC Ultra, my fellow masochist of a Man United fan, the save tomato to this pod's save Tam Otter, another Ashwin reference if you're joining us for the first time. The Bazball fan, the Succession super fan, who's still awaiting the season finale to the Glazers' Succession saga. The coder zombie with the FIDE chess rating. Welcome, Nishit.
Hello. And it's a very apt introduction because much like Sanju Samson, I have been lurking around the pod, but today I am actually making my debut.
Best you yourself. Excellent. To round off the panel, I've got 3 intros titled Wing It. So let me do a quick roll call. The Ejipura economist who can explain to you the marginal cost of cockiness with every additional day of Bazball played. The man who can spot a photograph angle like Sohail Abbas and Jugraj Singh combining for a cheeky penalty corner. Okay, I'm way out of my depth here. So please welcome the one and only Tareque Laskar.
Thanks, Srinath. Slight geolocation problems. I'm about 6-7 miles from Ejipura now.
This is a full hour in Bangalore.
Pretty much a full hour in Bangalore. It literally is.
Optimistically full hour.
Very good. Nobody knows whether our fourth fellow went to college or attended off movies like they were mathematics 2 classes. But he's turned out all right. Between the fintech scene and the Finnish scene, aka RCB, our man goes around looking for a movie reference like Sky after a scoop shot when mere mortals just don't see it. Welcome back, the knowledgeable Bengaluru bro who will tell you how he feels about the World Cup ticketing arrangement and infrastructure. Hey, Samir Mohan, welcome back.
Thank you. Soon to be knowledgeable Chennai bro if I get tickets to the India-Australia game. Geolocation problems.
I think the spot has been waiting to be knowledgeable Dharamshala crowd for a year and a half. Unfortunately, higher forces have intervened. I think twice now. To round off the panel, we have Portuguese Palanichami, the Lisbon Loganathan, the cricketing Karunakaran, who hops between Chris Martin concerts and R. Ashwin Mankats, aka the real Coldplay. The Velacheri wizard, Murali Sadagopan. Welcome, bro.
Oh, wow. Just monikers after monikers kept flying. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Today I am in Lisbon. Weather is quite nice, and it's, of course, raining in London as usual, but I'm so excited to be here and discuss all of it.
Very good. I think you set it up nicely at the start. We were like, England as we speak, Australia as we speak are 130 odd for no loss, chasing 383. So whichever way the game goes by the time you're listening, all of this will remain true. That's the only thing we'll say. We were actually talking about Murali. I want to throw straight to you. If England win this, are we supposed to think that it would have been 3-2 and Bazball's like greatest thing since sliced bread?
It is, right? So, in the last days, if His Royal Highness Sir Torrential Rain did not play spoil sport, does not continue to play spoil sport, and they won the last one, they win this one, and their people scored more runs. Zach Crawley is the highest scorer. He's got a higher strike rate. He's got a higher average. They are continuously able to bat with removing time out of the equation and show results each time. Were they the better team? Only Rain can tell.
That's cue for the next season of the test on Prime. No? Like season 3 becomes like Rain is one of the main characters on the X-ray sheet. So yeah.
Apparently, that was the high point of Australia yesterday. Like McDonald's pep talk was recorded for the test, the test documentary that is before the day's play, and then obviously they fed into Zach Crawley's pads, and the rest is unfortunate history. I think that's a lot to be said there.
I think there are a lot more sort of resulting or whatever, like Nitin keeps calling it, that we're going to do, because we're going to see how it all pans out at the end of it. But I think it's even, and if possible, even a little more than even on England's side, if everything had, actually fallen in their favor. Yeah, they lost the first two, but it looks like they came back hard. The Bazballing worked, the Zach Crawley's worked, even the ones lower down the order, the Wokeses, the Bairstows, everybody got their own redemption arcs, right? It is again another Telugu movie where the hero has come back towards the end and is rising from like the ashes like a phoenix. It's happening. But anyway, I'm very open to hearing alternate thoughts from the rest of you.
I actually want to throw it to Vinayakk because I'll give a little bit of background to take us back a few years. Vinayakk actually was in the US and became a journal about a decade ago. And over time, on his path to becoming sports editor, he's also become one of the most sane, balanced voices on the game, not just cricket, but many other sports. So I'm keen to hear amidst our, polarized opinions, let's say, here on the spot. How does a true fan of the sport look at something like Bazball amidst all the noise?
I thought I'm here on a break and I could just like randomly go off on tangents and rants and stuff.
Put off.
Indian politics, Ada.
Now you put me on the spot. Now I have to go back to where I was 1 month ago and I have to be like, okay, oh, damn, I have to be now sane and all that.
Vinayakk's mind voice be like Satya Shodhanai only, even on the podcast.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of the way they've played cricket. I mean, I've not been a fan of the pontification around it. I don't know if there's a better word for it. Like there is the talk around it has been putting off, but the cricket has been great. I mean, it's been a good series. Fun stuff happening on and off the field. Lots of discussions about laws of cricket. That is always great. There is no discussion about spirit of cricket, apparently, which is a thing. Which is, I mean, yeah. So
such a beautiful word to say it, because the pontiff, aka the Pope at number 3, is injured for a while now.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I my opinion on Bazball has been slightly like here and there. Like, I mean, I enjoy the cricket. I don't enjoy the discussion around it. But yeah, let's see how the series ends. I think 2-2 will be a fair reflection of how the series has gone, purely from a cricketing point of view. That's probably a good reflection of how Australia started well and now England are finishing well. So yeah, let's see how that goes. But in terms of the talk around it, I've not been a big fan of it. So yeah, that's where I am at with Bazball. And that, yeah, like most people, I'm looking forward to how it goes in India. That should be a good series for a good test of Bazballing. Will be the turning tracks of India. I think like a lot of people are looking forward to that. I am too. So that should be fun. Hope like we don't like serve up a pitch like the Ahmedabad one for Australia after like all the talk. That was slightly off-putting. I hope we stick to our guns, throw off turners, and see how it goes. So yeah. That'd be a good point to. I think that'd be a good cycle of Bazball to like the WTC cycle for 2 years. I think that'll be a good cycle of Bazball to see where it stood after the India series. I think that'll be a nice point to look back. I think. Right now, I'm on the fence.
Just like the series.
Yeah.
Just wanted to add a quick point to what Vinayak was saying about Bazball. And again, the problem being that, Murali was pointing out, that when you look at the result, it's kind of baffling and difficult to explain, and because the probabilities are not working out the way they should be, like all the chops onto the inside edge are not going onto the stumps. Suddenly we have to sort of look at outcome and say, oh, maybe Bazball is good, or sometimes we have to look at and say the Bazball is bad. But what I have found surprising about the series in particular is that there has not been too many collapses or sudden change or shift in momentum in a lot of the test matches, which I think is a point that probably needs a little bit of dissection in the sense of approaches of both the teams. So that's what I would throw out there for the panel at this moment.
This is where I think note to editor to insert audio note Nishit and the first part of that Bazball rant before we throw to the real Nishit and ask him if he feels the same as audio note Nishit, or if it's different.
So, because Murli made a Telugu movie reference, and I have to save Tony's honor also, so I'll make a Malayalam movie reference. So, so Bazball to me is Malayalam movie Rorschach, which is something I am sure is nothing existing. It's completely something new that Mammootty has invented. So I am pretty sure it's something brand new. So so I am a reverse Rorschach when it comes to Bazball. In the sense, I decide uh, whether Bazball is good or bad depending on the day. So I'll reserve my judgment until this particular test ends. Uh, but yeah, so it has been. Uh, it's definitely worked out well for England so far, and it's a major shift in terms of what England were doing previously, right? We talked about Ahmedabad test, or even England came in. So that would be a good point when England actually land in India and see how their approach works out. So we have frequently discussed that England has been getting a good success, but the real two test will be against Australia and against India in their away games. So even in their home game, this has been an exciting Ashes. So I think the next good test will be when England land in India, and I'm sure they'll perform better than what they did last time. But how much better is what remains to be seen. And uh, like Vinayak said, I hope we stick to our guns, and it could be a fun series.
One thing that I'm reminded of now is it's amazing, just less than 3 years since 3 years on, we are doing our own version of see you at the Gabba, mate, to England. It's mental. If you think about where England were, it's the reason they didn't make the WTC final this cycle. The first half, I think they flopped completely in the pre-Baz era, so to speak, and it feels so long ago. Speaking of Bazball, one thing that has gone completely under the radar for most people. Anybody watched Pakistan, Sri Lanka within this group?
Madness, yeah.
Yeah, absolute craziness with the 2-0 win. I didn't watch, so I'll throw to whoever watched a little bit.
Yeah.
I watched only like viral clip of Naseem Shah absolutely destroying Kushal Mendes and Angelo Matthews for over after over.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? Like I think at this time, the only people who refer to that table on the ICC website, which is the WTC table, is most people on this pod. So Tony specifically, Pakistan is number one on that as a result of this. So it's pretty tremendous. The 2-0 win has really bounced them to the top of the table. And they went from having that Park Bean incident to playing their own version of Bazball, you would call it. It's call it Pakball, call it whatever. But on ranked turners, when their entire top order was in the threat of being bundled out for 300, you had Saud Shakil, you had Aga Salman, just turn up and score those daddy hundreds, right? Like it was crazy. And then they beat Sri Lanka at their own game, because both the pitches started offering turn as early as, say, second half of day 3, I think, in the first test, and around similarish times even in the second test. And you just there Sri Lankan batsmen had no clue, absolutely. The only thing that I want to call from that test is the kind of blowback that's happened after that, right? Like there were a lot of prominent Sri Lankan names in the journalist circles who were saying that this team absolutely need to be packed and sent back home or whatever or whatnot. It's not for a lack of character, but Sri Lanka were thoroughly outclassed by a team that was better than them on the day, right? It's not for a lack of character. It's not for a lack of application. Maybe, just maybe, look at why you're still persisting with Karunaratne as the captain, right? Like, I mean, the guy has been so vocal about not being a captain, focusing on his batting, right? Maybe just take the extra burden off his shoulders and give it to, say, I would try that as an experiment, but make Dasun Shanaka as the test captain as well, right? Like he's had a fairly decent record as in the ODI and T20 teams, right? Like maybe he just understands the team better. It will be better in this phase, this sort of rebuilding phase for Sri Lankan cricket, to have a single captain across 3 formats, right? It's worth the shot. But it's not for a lack of application. They were thoroughly outclassed. A lot of, I think Jared Kimber's analysis, I remember a couple of years back, was calling for Shan Masood as like the next big thing from Pakistan cricket. He showed glimpses of that in his limited innings, promising innings that were like cut short by brilliant bowling. But man, just look at Saud Shakil. They have a winner on their hands. They need to just properly maintain him, right? He scored that daddy 100 in the second, in the first test, and then there was Aga Salman, right? Like those two people. And to think about it, Norman Ali at one point in the second test was on course to do a Kumble, Jim Laker, and an Ijaz Patel, and then Naseem Shah just came in and destroyed the tail, right? If not for that, we were this close to seeing the fourth instance of a 10-wicket haul in Test cricket, right? Like we were this close. So yeah, it was like a fun whole test series that was taking its place in its own universe. And the repercussions we are going to know, right? Like I, at this point, actually wish that there were a full-blown 4-match or a 5-match test series with Pakistan somewhere, maybe not necessarily neutral, visiting in the countries, right? Like that would have spiced the WTC table more. And instead here we are talking about how Bazball's true test will be in India, when we are still not sure if the outfield at Dharamshala will be ready for the whole test
What about
in the
tickets?
next year. Sir, let's not go there. That's a whole separate rant. It's a whole separate issue that we've been battling. So yeah, I mean, just to bookend that thing, we do have an open table again, cliche. I do look forward to the whole England-India thing, but Pakistan in, say, an Australian conditions or even in an England conditions now is a force to reckon with, unless they get rolled over, which I don't see happening with the likes of Naseem Shah and all of these new stars who are just coming up, who've plied their trade. So yeah, it's open season out there in WTC, and Test cricket is suddenly back and great again.
One thing to
Take
call
that
out.
T20 detractors.
Wanted to add 2 quick points, Srinath, to what Samir was talking about. One was the whole Pakball thing, right? That in the first test, they used it to great effect because they were in a bit of trouble in the first innings. And that's when Aga Salman came in and they played that partnership, I think about 150, 60 runs or so in 30 overs. And how they chased the score in the second innings as well. It was classic Pakistan. They seemed to be losing wickets. I think after Babar fell, it was still like 50 or some odd runs to get. And any other era, Pakistan may have collapsed from there, but they scored at like 5 and over and got this over with. So those are the 2 things that stood out for me. And thirdly, wanted to add a BNP jinx reference here, because I tweeted that potential Jim Laker klaxon.
Oh God!
Ali, and just the next over, Naseem Shah came in and got the 3 wickets, and the game was over.
My word, that BNP jinx is so strong.
So one last thing I wanted to add on Pakistan, and this is a genuine serious question on the future of cricket, is Mickey Arthur was Pakistan coach when they won the 2017 Champions Trophy. Since then, obviously, they had a raft of changes and appointments. He's now based in, I think, Derbyshire, if I'm not wrong, as a full-time director of cricket or coach. So when Pakistan went looking for their new coach, I think their previous board chairman, Najam Sethi, called Mickey Arthur because he was his man who did the magic with their last ICC title. And Mickey was appointed as a coach, doing his job fully on Zoom, like this podcast very much. He's the online coach, and the memes flowed. So, open question: is this a model that's worth replicating? What would Jamie sir think about it? Because he gets to be with his kids and coach Rohit Sharma remotely.
I don't know
Awkward
if I want to
silence.
give. No, I don't want to give a comical or a mocking answer, but I think from just an honest standpoint, I think sport is one of those things where you are physically with them is when you're able to feel the motivation, encouragement, the people, and in terms of wanting to stick together as a team, how does it feel if the one man who's supposedly supposed to shepherd the team is sitting a few thousand miles away over Zoom? It could work in terms of being a tactician or a creative officer or a strategist who can put down what you could do, could even probably work in football. But as a full-time coach, I don't know. It just feels like you're diminishing what the team's capable of by saying, I don't even want to be next to you for what you're doing. I can do it from like far away itself. I'll call you regularly. If not, just mark me as busy. This, I don't think feels like, yeah, I don't think it feels like coach material to me. That's just my 10 cents.
No, I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
the uh, we have first-hand experience as an audience of how this works out, right? This current India West Indies series, for whatever it's worth, I watched it a little bit, and it is one of those weirdest thing where Courtney Walsh is joining in from Zoom, talking to uh, anyone who is there in studio, and you can clearly tell that there is a lack of palpable chemistry, right? That he is talking on his so the closeness of it, or the chemistry of it, or back and forth of it, it's clearly missing in the commentary itself. I can imagine it could be much worse when it comes to actual coaching.
But then here's a flip side before I think Vinayak or Tarek take it over, right? Like national teams don't actually need you to coach on fundamentals, right? Like these are fully formed players who have proven their mettle at some level. All they need is a lot of these nuances, nitty-gritties that need to be fine-tuned, which may or may not involve them spending hours and hours in the nets, right? It could be mere application, right? It could be mere understanding situations, understanding match scenarios, being what is called quote unquote game aware, right? uh, Given that it's a more advanced sort of like a plus level of thinking that needs to go in to coach someone, right? Like it could be a worthy experiment. I mean, I'm all for if tomorrow, say, Jamie sir comes back and says, I'll coach the India A team or the under 19, but I'll just coach Rohit Sharma on game awareness or something as like a consultant coach over Zoom or whatever. It's a fairly good bet, because then you leave it to the Vikram Rathors and the Paras Pambres who are already working on a lot of these fine tuning aspects, right? So it's actually a good bet for national teams, right? Like a lot of the on ground work has been done, and you can then become like some sort of like a feeder line. But again, I would say it works as an experiment. The team bonding part, yes, that's where I kind of agree that the coach has to be there. But given that this is Pakistan, and given that a lot of the whole Mickey Arthur Najam Sethi experiment, I mean the conversation that's there, we don't know the depth of what could have happened, right? I would still say it's like a worthy experiment, and just leave it at that, and maybe not pursue it after 6 months, right? Like probably at least not in a year where you have like major ICC events or when the World Test Championship is at stake, right?
no, and you called it right. Like it's not like there are no coaching staff traveling. There's an entire group of specialists who will
and
always be
and
there.
and R. Ashwin making videos around, Sambavangal, Pavangal, and all of that, right? Like, so there are enough
Paridabangal.
Paridabangal and all of that.
No, if
Yeah.
you don't have a person physically saying, get the ball, Ash, I don't think it's coaching enough, man. Like, you have to be around you. I have to feel you, man. You can't say it on Zoom. It just doesn't sound the same. Imagine Ravi Shastri coming on Zoom. Ash would call him on Zoom. Zoom, ready? Get the ball, Ash. Ash was like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Murali Sadagoppan just explained why OnlyFans has got pre-MF, right? You have to feel it to feel it, probably. So, never know.
Last, intangibles.
Yeah, product people, Parthi Bangal, I believe.
I just wanted to add a quick word before maybe we're throwing it to Vinayakk on this. One is I'll just draw from personal experience of when I had to do like online classes for the first time during COVID. And it was the same question, right? That would it be as effective? And you have all those doubts about how much more watered down could this be? And the whole
Kids turning
experience.
off the video.
Yes, exactly. So and it was definitely difficult, but I think as we went along we kind of found a middle ground that where you could reach out. I found out that rather than taking group discussions, individual calls work best. In fact, surprising facets of the students came out in those discussions. So I'm just drawing from that in terms of what Samir was saying, right? That it could be an interesting experiment to do and to see what level of knowledge requires direct individual interaction to pass on. I know sports is not the same as teaching economics, but kind of drawing that parallel. And also, if Force Ghosts work as senses for Star Wars, why not cricket? So, putting it to Vinayakk on that note.
No, I think you guys have covered most of it. What Murali said is something where I would stand to. I mean, it's a sport. I mean, it's the team. The feel of being in a team and all that is probably more physical, and this would work for a consultant or a strategist. I think just one thing to add is, like, if I am, like, from a coach's perspective, we've talked about a general perspective. Like, let's say if I'm asked to coach a team, for me personally, I would just have a lot of FOMO, right? I mean, I tell something to the players, do this, do that, and then the call closes, and I'd be sitting at home and wondering, like, what is going on now? Like, I just feel lost, right? I mean, I don't think it would solve the purpose of being a coach, or telling someone to do something and then not actually being there to see whether it's being done or not. I mean, I just have if you're speaking to them for 30 minutes in a day, what are they doing for the rest of the 7-8 hours that they're usually out on the ground? I mean, then what is the joy of being a coach? Or I don't see the point of that. It's because Vicky has another job on his hand, maybe that works for him. But if I am the coach of a team and I'm being told to do it on a Zoom, then I don't think I'd enjoy it. So that's just a very personal point of view.
This is a insanely perfect segue to speaking of teams with no coaches. Last week saw Harmanpreet Kaur reach her wit's end in Dhaka after I think a series of questionable umpiring decisions, let's say. Obviously, there's been a lot of criticism of her and what she did at the presentation ceremony when they were sharing the trophy. She's supposed to have said include the umpires in the team photo. Obviously, she protested when she lost her wicket, all of this stuff. Vinayakk, you had a different take on this because you see it as a bubbling of many things coming together. One is random selections, no coach, no explanations from selectors, team just being, left in the lurch and to fend for themselves. While obviously good things like the WPL has happened, there's been complete kind of, indifference, let's say, to the appointment of a full-time coach for the Indian women's team.
Yeah, so I think the tricky thing, for the longest time, I didn't want to say anything about it because there is not much to say about what Harmanpreet did, right? I mean, there is no defending that. That is, I think, the first point of this whole argument. Sure, I mean, smashing stumps, people have done that before. I mean, we're talking about Bangladesh and umpiring. Smashing stumps is kind of their own, trademark.
Shakib tribute.
At this point, yeah, it's their thing. So it's not new. Protesting umpiring decisions is not new. Coming out to the presentation ceremony and saying umpiring is pathetic, that's probably new. I don't think we've had that level of criticism in cricket before. So those parts of what Harman did, I could understand. I'm not a fan of how she approached it. I mean, because technically she was actually out. I mean, whether it was LBW or caught and slip, she was out, I think. So her reaction, I don't understand. It was a collection of things. I mean, the whole series was like riddled with controversial decisions, poor streaming, poor commentary. This, like, I mean, you could good riddance to that series, right? I mean, so that's what's probably was going on in her mind as well, and it all just came out, and all that I understand.
Just to interrupt and say that
Yeah.
this pod has better production than that series did.
Yeah,
Oh, totally.
Yeah, we have like fancy mics and stuff, man. So that's even, yeah, and we have like cogent discussions on topics, right? Yeah, that's already two things that are better. So yeah, I think what she did in the presentation was completely uncalled for, basically because it belittled what Bangladesh did. Whether she was a fan of what went on in the series or not, she just completely disrespected the opponent. And I completely understand what Negar Sultana Jyoti did. You know, just taking her team off from there was a very mature thing to do. She could have probably, like, you know, gotten into an argument there with Harman. It could have gotten ugly for all we know. She did the right thing in taking people off. And I think she had an interview recently. I was reading something yesterday on Rev Sports where she said she was most disappointed because the team, like, there are a lot of youngsters in Bangladesh who actually consider Harmanpreet and Smriti to be their idols. And after defeating them in a series and it ending this way, when, you know, she thought maybe Harman and Smriti would come and pat these youngsters on the back, pat a Marufa on the back and saying, you know, you're doing well, you know, keep it going and things like that. It ended that way. That I think is the most disappointing aspect. So that I think is the first part of this discussion, right? You have to, what Harman did is inexcusable. The reason I felt that I had to say what I said on Twitter was because the criticism was just so over the top. I mean, you're asking for the captain to be sacked based on, like, you know, a few moments of indiscretion, right? I mean, she's already getting punished, which is fine. Like, the ICC did what they had to do and all that. You're going over the top saying, you know, she bought the country to disrepute, you know, she should be deplorable. Words like that, those were thrown around, right? Yep. So that made me think, so you're saying all this because the captain had like 15 minutes of bad temper. But the apathy towards the team has been going on for 6 months. Did you ask for the selectors to be sacked when they went to a World Cup without a head coach? Yeah. Imagine, I mean, I hate saying this whenever there is a discussion on women's cricket, because I used to do this when I started out. Then I told myself, well, let's not do this, right? This is something that I consciously avoid. Don't say what would happen if this happened in men's cricket, right? Don't use that in any argument. But for this, imagine the Indian men's team going to a World Cup without a head coach. I mean, is that scenario even possible? Absolutely not. So when that happened, how many people spoke up? Like, how many people even knew that the the T20 World Cup team didn't have a head coach, despite the former head coach being moved 1 month in advance? It was not something Ramesh Pawar didn't step down overnight before the World Cup. They had a month before that. They appointed Rishikesh Kanetkar as the batting coach. I don't know what joy there was. They could have just appointed him as head coach if they were not going to appoint a head coach. They could have just told him, like, you're the head coach. I mean, but they said he's a batting coach and we are looking for a head coach. Now they've been looking for a head coach for so long and there is still no clarity on who the head coach is, and Nushin went. So my question is,
they said they would appoint a head coach before the Bangladesh series, right? That was a thing for 4 days.
They had put out, they had put out a advert like just after WPL had gotten over, and they apparently got a few applications. Reports came in that Amol Mazumdar was the favorite. Then nothing happened. Then Nushin went. I mean, for 7 months, they have not had a head coach. There is no vision, right? I mean, imagine a team, like any team, right? Not just a cricket team, any team going to a corporate environment, without knowing what their vision is, what their ideas are, what their values are. You're bound to have things like, you're bound to see things like this, right? I mean, there is no one to rein in. I saw a tweet from Snehal that came up from back then when, you know, W. Raman forced, when he was a head coach, he forced the Indian team to, not force, like he encouraged the Indian team to go speak to the England players after the World Cup, even though they were heartbroken, you know, not England, the Australia 2020 World Cup, I think, to go and congratulate them, even though you're heartbroken, right? So that's when the players are not in the right frame of mind, you need someone to shepherd them. I'm not saying Nushin is not that person, but they've been changing. So just, I mean, when people are calling out Harman for such a small mistake, something has been going on for 6-8 months and there's no one. Like, I mean, if you're saying what Harman did is sackable, in the BCCI, admin sackable as well. I mean, their mistake seems graver to me, and people were like, "Ray, what is this waterboardery?" But I mean, this feels like a normal waterboardery to me.
Yeah.
Valid waterboardery.
Round 3 of Samir baiting. What about the tickets?
No, I think perfect segue into the whole waterboardery, admin needs sacking and all of that, right? Like what we are like 65 days odd out before the first ball is bowled in that England versus New Zealand game, and no news about tickets. I mean, the whole app chronology samajhiye in the last 2 weeks has been brilliant. Okay, first there is this news that comes out that there are like luxury packages selling for the India Pakistan game in Ahmedabad. Said luxury packages get sold out. No news about tickets being announced. People being people, suddenly next day you get a report saying that because of the fact that Ahmedabad hotels are like seeing record room rents over that period, people are checking into hospitals and ICUs and booking like 1 day full body tests and health checkups around October 14th and October 15th, so that they get to view the match and they get to stay in the hospital overnight, right? Like, I'm not even going to get into the whole the whole basic human courtesy aspect of it, because I just see that as a the whole different thing, and there'll be a whole different tangent. 3 days later, you get a news saying that because said game, India versus Pakistan, is on the first day of Navaratri, and there is sources who quote that it could be security concerns, there is chance of the match being moved, either preponed or postponed, likely to be preponed. So you see how literally, and to quote from Sidmonga's article, right, despite all of this, they will go scot-free, because I was trying to think about it and trying to articulate this point, because there is really no affordable means of entertainment for an average Indian citizen, right? Like, to give a very personal example, yesterday evening, I went out for a movie with my family. And this is for the first time in at least like 6 to 8 months that we did not take popcorn. And it was a very conscious choice, right? Think about it. Well-to-do, no issues. We've gone to the movie, 4 people. We can probably stand in the queue and afford the popcorn, and yet we don't take it. So imagine the kind of people who will probably be standing in the queues, getting those beatings, right? And Sidmonga's article also called out for the fact that, it was a ridiculous decision on the IPL final to retain your physical tickets, because the queue, and to not and to keep the QR code safe so that they can be granted entry again into the stadium the next day. Similar announcement this time, no e-tickets, physical papers only. I mean, why are you the world's richest board, man? I mean, why are you doing all of this? And in the middle of all of this, they announced the England schedule. No games to Mumbai, no games to Kolkata, no games to Chennai, no games to Bangalore, no games to Delhi. The only marquee game is probably Hyderabad and Dharamshala. So, and the rationale that everyone gives is it's because the other centers hosted World Cup games. So these 4 5 centers get games now. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then I am pretty sure this is what's going to happen after the England series. There are at least going to be 2 centers. I don't want to demoralize or call out the pitchforks, but I'm taking a wild guess that it is going to be one of Hyderabad or Vizag is going to be in there, where you're going to see record low crowds for some reason, because you'll inadvertently schedule day 3 or day 4 over the weekend, but you'll give up a ranked turner. Day 1, day 2, people won't turn up, the match gets closed, and you'll say test cricket is dying in India, right? Like, your entire scheduling, your entire planning, there is no thought process. You send the women's team to a Bangladesh to tour where even basic video equipment is not existing, and the commentary is, to put it very politely, sucks donkey balls. It's just crazy. And the only thing that you care about are probably central contracts and sponsorships. In a quirk of fate, so Dream 11 runs this thing that's like a equivalent of an F1 paddock, right? Where you have like a luxury whole, ringside view, VIP tickets and all of that. So with this planning, because Dream 11's that arm had already announced the luxury packages for a lot of the games for international residents, people who had pre-booked are now starting to lose money, right? Like, this is just Dharamshala from March 2023 all over again. You don't have outfields ready. You don't have basic ticketing mechanism ready. And I think we should include that Sidmonga piece in the show notes, because it basically talks about the problem or the deep-rooted thing that is there inside the administration, that the sport is not for a fan. And to be very honest, even if I want to take my partner out or my parents out to the World Cup game in Chennai, I have to think at least 3 times, because no facilities, right? Like if the IPL was any heads up, it was a nightmare. It was a proper nightmare. And with each day, the chances for real fans to probably get tickets and go tour is just reducing. So yeah, I mean, rant Finn, obviously, because there's a lot of Dharamshala PTSD there. But going back to what I had quoted to Karthik back in the day, the best thing to be an Indian fan is just sit at your house, fix your internet, grab a nice cold beer or a whiskey or whatever non-alcoholic drink that you like, and just watch the match, because that is the best experience. There is nothing else. And trust me, it's not worth going to a stadium at this point.
Yeah, very well said, Samir. So I'll just say 2 things. So first thing, Bangalore is hosting India-Australia cricket test match, right? And it's one of those series where Australia can genuinely challenge India. They are already India is already in danger of losing the series to Australia at home. And silly me, I made a mistake of thinking that, okay, let's reach early in the morning. I should get a ticket. And before I realized, I missed the whole session, because the ticketing system was so complex that it took me 2-3 hours just to get tickets. Then I had to get in a separate line to get inside the stadium. And so all's well that ends well. It was a happy match. And then this other thing about IPL final, I am in the town. I am for personal reasons, I am in Ahmedabad. I have an offer of ticket, but I choose not to go for multiple reasons. And then this news starts coming in about how fans are queuing up. There are no proper facilities. They don't know how to do this. And then this World Cup announcement comes, India versus Pakistan at Ahmedabad. So now here I am thinking, now this is my turn to take revenge against the system. I am from Ahmedabad. So as much as BCCI tries hard to make it hard for fans, I'll try to push back as much as I can. Even in this group, even in the close friends group I have mentioned, if you guys are planning to go, tell me. I'll help you out as much as I can. I asked my brother to say that let's be prepared. I'll whether I come or not, let's make sure to collect the tickets. We'll find someone who can collect the tickets for fans or friends who are joining us. Uh, let's try to find people uh, apart from our house. Let's find people who are willing to host friends, and we will I don't know whether I would call my rage against the machine, but it is what it is when the administrator doesn't step up, you have to step up for the fellow fans. So I was feeling pretty happy about myself, that okay, this is something that can really work out well. I may not be able to do it for 100 people, but maybe 10 people. I can actually make it a good experience. And then
Oh my God. On
this
Sare
third
Jahan Se
piece of
Acha is
news.
playing in the
Yeah,
background,
man.
man.
This
Like
is,
I got
uh,
like goosebumps is happening. And I'm thinking this man is like, okay, BCCI is terrible. Let's kill them with kindness. I was like, this is sinister, so good. You are like, I don't care if you screw this up so much. I'll make it so good for fans that they won't be able to hate you. What are you made of, Nishit?
yeah.
Can I
Yeah,
just interrupt here 1 second?
yeah,
I
sure.
think that is probably what BCCI wants you to do, man. They'd be really happy if there are like 3-4 people doing this and like, oh, this is great. Let's just let people do this. I don't think you're raging against the BCCI. You're probably making life easier for them.
Oh my God.
That's but that's
It's democratized
precisely
hospitality package.
Yeah,
but
this is
but
this in econ speak, a private solution to a public goods problem, essentially.
exactly
The
that
I
is
in
the
BCCI
point.
is inception. They just planted it in your head.
But
One
but
one
Srinath,
person
sorry
to
to,
call out. Sorry, no, go on.
no, but exactly this is the thing, right? This is the thing that Tareque just mentioned. It's a private good for it's a private good that's being offered in the place of a public good, right? Like again, if you go back to econ speak and think about what's an incentive for a BCCI to make it. Again, it has to be a fan-driven experience, right? But it doesn't have to be so fan-driven that someone has to open their house doors for people to stay, right? It should not be this case. It should be the case that 85,000, right? Like that's the ballpark capacity of the new Motera. So 85,000 people, you know that they are coming, right? You should be able to create an ecosystem and create this whole thing around where people can come in and take the tickets. MCG has 10,000 more, right? And the odds of getting into a Boxing Day test with India and Australia is 100x more than what it would be for an average India game in Bangalore. I am not even naming who the opponent could be, but it's just an average India game. I have better odds of going and watching it in Melbourne or Adelaide with my extended family there rather than just hopping, skipping, jumping at Chinnaswamy 10 kilometers from my house, or even picking like the beach line here in Chennai and going watching a CSK game. Because my only thing is probably I'll pick the beach line and go watch the game when the train goes through between Chepauk and Chittadripet, right? Like not enter the stadium. Think about it. Think about what sort of an experience that you're giving to a country whose affordable entertainment options are dwindling by the end of the day. Like I don't have to tell people how expensive popcorn has become, how prohibitive even a movie watching experience is, how satellite rights is probably not the way through, right? Like because even in a country where 500 million people are covered by mobile networks and internet, the load is such that why is it that the peak viewership at one point is just like 1 crore or 2 crores, unlike say a Jio Cinema or a Hotstar, right? Like it points to a more problem where you have to make it accessible, you have to lower the gates. But no, you are still gonna be like, I'm gonna be stuck in this whole bureaucratic dilemma because मेरे को घंटा फर्क पड़ता है, मेरे को incentive नहीं है, right? Like it's literally that. And I really am scared for how this will look in the whole personal, in the world sphere now that it's a big event, and I'm pretty sure that there will be dignitaries visiting if, let's say, India go into the semifinals. I dread if they're even able to make at least like 60% of the arrangement that happened probably in 2011 for the Mohali game, right? Very few, I mean, there were instances of people not getting tickets, but people didn't resort to lathi charging in that game, right? Like, and it was crazy. So I just hope this doesn't feel like we are holding like a short end of the stick as Indian fans, right? That's the only thing.
Somewhere on a Mumbai local, Vipul, aka Sporty Baba, is listening to this segment, nodding along, probably into the head of his fellow passenger right next to him. Anyway, on that note, welcome back from episode 82 of The Seen and the Unseen. Sorry, bits and pieces.
Oh, man.
Okay.
Nishit, I have to call out this one thing, man. This goes so against the stereotype they paint of your community, man. Here I was thinking you will say, I'll open my doors. All my neighbors will open the doors. Before I knew it, through word of mouth, a Gujarati man overtakes Airbnb in 15 years as a LinkedIn post I'll read in 2030. And here you're saying, no, everybody should come. They should watch. Everybody should be happy. It's so ungood, man.
I don't know how to top that, but I think we should finish with a couple of. I don't know if we do Stuart Broad or India's World Cup selection. I don't think we'll peak beyond this discussion. But what do you guys feel? We're about 50 minutes into the pod.
We should totally bring in Vinayakk about Broad, because he would have had experiences of seeing Broad on the cricket field and some journalistic pointers probably.
Maybe
Nope,
I can.
never seen a cricket match as a journalist. So yeah, not
That's
me.
why. That's why Vinayak watches badminton. You know, right? No ticket issues.
Yeah, it's all it's free.
That's the core
Whoever
reason.
comes in first.
So Vinayak, I'm going to hijack Srinath's role for a moment and going to put you onto the same question Samir is saying, that from a sports journalist point of view, how does one cover broad, or how do you paint the broad brushstroke of this cricketer?
Broadly speaking.
Yes.
Wow.
And not deliver a broadside. Go on.
It's just too easy, man. Yeah, I think it's a very fascinating. I mean, if I was like, a journalist in England and all that, I would love writing about Broad, right? I mean, he's the kind of character who gives you a lot. I think you generally like writing about people like that, colorful, either way, like his, opinions on spirit of cricket and laws and all that is on one side. He's a great cricketer, speaks well, whether he's right or wrong, he's very assertive. So yeah, he'd be a great cricketer to follow, a great cricketer to write about. Can't deny what he's done as a cricketer, especially in tests. I mean, 600 wickets as a pacer is just unbelievable. In this era, especially, right? I mean, and to think that he started off as a white ball bowler and, all that he had early in his career, and then to focus with James Anderson, become this pair of terrific bowlers in favorable conditions. We need to add that whenever we speak about Anderson and Broad, I feel. But yeah, terrific cricketer. And whether you agree with him or not, as a journalist, you would love to write about him. I think that's the kind of player I'd remember him as. I pretty much disagree with most of the things he says in terms of opinion on laws and spirit and all that. I completely disagree with what he says, but he has opinions, so that's a nice thing. And it's always good to follow cricketers or athletes like that, instead of people who toe the line and don't really say anything interesting and all that. Yeah, so it'll be a fascinating person to write about. I mean, whoever writes his biography would have a great time, I'm sure.
I think it's one of the rare cases, I think personally for me, being able to separate the art from the artist fair bit, because Broad as a bowler, I think because of how privileged England are with the Barmy Army traveling with them, he can G up a crowd in any situation of a match at any venue in the world, because he's at least got a group of fans. And when it's in England, of course, you don't even need to, think about how much that impacts their performance. For example, whether it's the Holly stand in Edgbaston or his own home ground in Trent Bridge. I was reading quite a bit of the writing about him yesterday because it was so sudden and took me by surprise, to a point where for a couple of days I was even willing to support and root for England to draw the series, which, even if you've listened to a single episode of me being on the spot, you would know is significant detour from status quo. I think Broad was touted to be a top order batsman when he started because of his height and his back foot cover drive, which they say was very similar to his dad. And from there to becoming an elite fast bowler of 600 plus wickets. Obviously, it reminds me of Ashna, but beyond that, I think it's quite an achievement as a fast bowler to have played 17 years and to bring up the overused Indian fans angle to this, to come back from being tonked for 6 sixes in an over at a World T20, no matter what the inconsequentiality of that match was. I think it's quite a career that he's had, and Test cricket at least needs more characters like that too. It's almost like Kohli at the Chinnaswamy geeing up the crowd when India are chasing a win on day 5. So it does need more Broads and Kohlis to thrive in our world.
May I just say that Vipul will be nodding along to that one as well.
We'll see more of this then.
I don't know if I still liked watching him bowl. Like, I can't make up my mind, it's so difficult, right? It's like I hated watching him bowl. Is that the part I liked about myself because I could hate him so much? This is so convoluted in my head. Because every time he comes into bowl, I can tell myself, I hate this, or this face coming into bowl, and yet it perfectly pitches on like middle or off in middle and then curves away, just leaves Khwaja's bat, and Khwaja goes, and I'm like, yeah, he is an oof kind of bowler. He really does do that to you from time to time. The fact that he can hold the odd, cross seam and make it nip back in, and the fact that he had Warner just hanging on a shoestring, man. Already Warner came so low. He's coming low to every tournament, and then you come in to know that you'll definitely give your wicket to the same bowler each time. And he's the only bowler I think who's played all 5 tests consistently, bowled 20 wickets more than Cummins. I think there is a lot to admire about this chap. 2/3 of his wickets are in abroad. I think 400 out of 600 are at home. It's only 200 abroad. Nevertheless, I think at home to have somebody like that, which means it's super difficult for you to play because he's always going to be so good. Because even Anderson has had dips. He's dipped the sashes. He's not really there. But Broad has been, and he's consistently been that thorn they could use against the Australian batting, which has been pretty strong. So I think I'm lots to admire about Broad, and I wish him well. Though I cannot believe he didn't walk after edging something to slip, because that's just horrible, man. It's the farthest anybody has edged anything and not walked. It's first slip. The keeper couldn't catch it because you had nicked it so far out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it does require some amount of acting chops as well, because he kept a straight face. He acted clueless, like, you want my money? Why? And then the umpire, absolute dunce. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. I think I was seeing that specific video passage of play today, and I was like, after Brett Lee, he does seem to have a promising Bollywood career if he ever decides to. But having said that, I came across the greatest probable tweet on Brad yesterday, right? Like, I was looking up some
By El
stuff
Chopper
around.
Nose.
No, it wasn't by El Choppernos. We'll link it. It's courtesy, something that was. It says that no fast bowler has taken more wickets than Stuart Broad in Test cricket. That is at 117 since he started wearing the white headband. And I was like, wow, that's a great starting point, right? Like, this is properly in the whole Alex Carey swimming pool territory, right? And that made me throw back to, I mean, we'll all talk about how Broad is like a likable or an unlikable character, but probably in one of the Ashes wherein the camera was wearing like a white headband in a I think it was the Spider Cam which wore the headband to the Broad, or headband after hitting him or something like that. That felt like a cute
The
moment.
robot cam. I
Oh, yeah,
when he
yeah.
called about, says, "Stop moving the robot." So
Yeah.
I think that was.
Yeah, I mean, and that was hilarious, right? Like, I mean, that was hilarious, and I don't think, and that also got me to contextualize about how less and less of we are seeing of this fierce batsman versus fierce bowler rivalry, right? I think probably Broad versus Warner has been this one where Warner gets the runs, but Broad still has the wood over him, right? Like, this is a great throwback to the Tendulkar versus Vakar, probably, and or let's say there's so many of them, but off late we are seeing less of that. Is it because of rotation? Is it because of Bazball or whatever, right? Like,
This
I mean,
this is a whole different pod, right? Like, how many teams play each other enough for that to be a
exactly,
sustained rivalry?
exactly.
It's,
Yeah, I mean, have we moved away from the sustained rivalry period? But I do hope, I mean, irrespective of whatever the result is by the time the pod releases, that there is an 18th for Broad, right? Like, I mean, the delightful joy in his face whenever he gets Warner is something else, right? Like, and I mean, it just also signifies the downfall, or the sort of the curtains on this rivalry thing, right? We don't want to get into the whole thing, but probably I'll leave the romanticizing part to the other podcast about probably the first wicket or the headband thing, which is heads and tails. But yeah, love to see if there's an 18th wicket by today, which it looks difficult today, but probably by tomorrow when the play resumes. So yeah.
nice. I just want to finish on this by talking about the tribute Sky did. And obviously, the great cricketer had an elite mistake on that and said Broad informed Sky long enough for them to produce a 3-minute piece on him, voiced by Michael Atherton. So this was coming for a long time, according to them. But anyway, I think the parts I really liked about, how they did it was not a biased theology just with the best moments, but also Samir, what you referenced was part of the script. Atherton apparently wrote the whole thing, and he said if a human could pick a fight with a robot and pretty much the pitch and the bails and the stumps and make them feel like the biggest enemy there is, Stuart Broad is that bowler, because he's been characterized as a pantomime villain or somebody who gives it his all. But Anderson keeps getting called as the English specialist, right? But Broad has played 25 consecutive Ashes tests at home since that 2009 spell, when he got Watson and Ponting and Hussey and pretty much the entire top and middle order, which is pretty insane. You don't think of Broad as he's not Clouder's son, right? Like, he doesn't have even a moniker equivalent of that. And Broad's somehow, he's even on the Lord's Honours Board, I believe, as a batter with that 100, and it's quite insane. Murali mentioned this, 400 wickets at home. It's as good as Anderson, man. I don't know.
Yeah, and that brings you to question why there are a lot of memes floating in Tamil which cannot be translated. Why Anderson isn't retiring, right? Like, it's probably the whole Clouders thing is what one has to believe. But yeah, great career. 600 wickets is not a mean feat. Is not a small feat.
One thing I understand this is a team sport, so further analogy won't work. People should play until when they want to, etc. But it's not like Anderson can play, man. It's not like he's such a difficulty to lug around. And he's fit. You see him diving at the boundary to save. He's really pushing himself. And sometimes you can just not get wickets and still be a good bowler. I don't think he was dishing out like half volleys and short balls all the time. You're just not lucky sometimes, and it's a tough series. It's a really good, like, there are Zen batters batting like 400, 500 balls out there, man. Usman Khawaja just he's a monk. So what can you do? Sometimes you just don't get wickets, but I think he should play as long as he wants to, because England will keep giving him those tests.
Yeah, I'm not against him playing for long. I'm just calling out the fact that there are a lot of these memes floating right around that, and it's a fact that there's a certain section of the audience which believes that his time, quote unquote, has come to pass or whatever. But he just unleashed a majestic reverse sweep today, so you never know. More Anderson in the future, probably touring Dharamshala if the outfield is ready.
You're from a country that made MS Dhoni. Anderson is nothing. You could retire for 10, 15 years continuously. Your neighbor is to Shahid Afridi. He's still playing today now as we speak in Zimbabwe Afro T10. Time is there.
Time is there, yeah. We'll put one entire 15-year IPL career after people started talking about retirement.
Exactly.
On that note, you'll have noticed that our podcast now has a brand new professional logo. Unlike the content of the pod itself, it's been done by an expert. And our heartfelt thanks to Harini Kannan, who also happens to be one of our podcast group and hopefully soon to be regulars, Varun Venkatesh. She has done a stellar job of, listening to our repeated feedback and producing version after version. So thank you so much, Harini. And on that note, that's the end of episode 82 of Bits and Pieces. If you've stayed with us for this long, thanks so much for listening. Leave us a rating, only 5 stars, wherever you listen to this podcast. So we keep this going and bring you more lols and nonsense in the near future. Thank you. Say bye, guys.
Thank you everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, Bob.
Look out for our next episode in the theaters because it's 83. I'm just
It's on Netflix, by the way.